Murdoch was just starting to build the empire of the Sun in those days. Having bought a bunch of local newspapers, including one my grandmother worked at, his shit and awful national newspaper had just been launched, and now he was moving into British television, buying a controlling stake in London Weekend, largely as an act of revenge against David Frost, who'd pissed him off in an interview on the channel. So it goes. As soon as he got there, he started firing board members left, right and centre, pissing around with the schedules, and changing programme ideas, specifically aiming them slightly lower. It didn't win him many friends, but it did win the station healthy ratings for the first time in their history, and, more importantly, profit. David Frost, of course, went on to create another ITV channel, which started out with aspirations of being hard-hitting and highbrow, but ended up played by industrial action and barely discernible ratings until it had its fortunes turned around by an evil reptilian Australian. But that's another story. The moral of which is history never repeats itself, people always do. By 1971, though, Murdoch was starting to make the ITA uneasy. As a foreign national and owner of several very significant British newspaper interests, local and national, they weren't at all sure if he was the kind of person who should be allowed to own a British television station. So, very quietly, in 1971, they told him either to sell his shares or lose his licence. Murdoch chose the former, but much like Skeletor, he'd be back. Not in any way that'll be covered by this series, though. Fortunately for me, I want to take a bath after just talking about him for 3 minutes. Murdoch left behind him a healthy company, which was unthinkable before he got there. Unashamedly populist, with the likes of lovable, grimy, sexist sitcom On the Buses, and equipped with a new, brash, colourful logo to reflect this. It's based, dull, on the Thames, which looks kind of like an L and a W at one stage, and the forbidding, faintly avant-garde drums of the original are replaced with xylophone and horn. Finally, London Weekend, like Thames, had an iconic symbol to call their own. So iconic it was, in fact, that within a few years it was being parodied by the likes of warm Lancastrian talk show host Russell Harty, or Andrew Marshall and David Renwick, creators of the sketch show End of Part 1. In 1978 it was adapted again, this time officially, as the station was finally given a much less unwieldy logo and name. So was born the face of middlebrow and lowbrow light entertainment, LWT. Thames had fun with their ident too. At one point it was eaten by a giant Pauline quirk. In the 80s, the famous tune was used almost as a taunt to the BBC after they poached away their biggest stars.
Here they are now, welcome and rise.
But the undisputed master of this form was the godlike genius, Cuddly Kenny Everett.
Hello.
Cuddly Ken could never let the Thames logo form up normally. He filled it with beer. He made a concerto out of the jingle.
Welcome to the concert hall here tonight, where we are about to hear the Thames television theme as played by the original composer, Igor Blimey. And here he is now. Mr. Blimey mounts the podium, and away he goes.
Perhaps most outrageously, he turned the skyline into a panorama of breasts. Not even the continuity announcers were safe.
As you know, the next scheduled programme was to be the Kenny Everett video cassette, the new Thames comedy show starring Kenny Everett. Unfortunately, due to censorship problems this afternoon, it was decided that the show was unsuitable for public viewing. And so instead, we bring you a second show.
You can get away with this these days. Modern equivalent will probably have Ad and Dex scampering around in the background of one of ITV's live-action Blandathons, possibly while Simon Cowell scowls at them from the distance. Both Thames and LWT breezed through the 1980 franchise round with no trouble at all. By now they were two of the biggest producers of network shows in ITV. And while it's a little crude to divide them into Thames making a quality programme and LWT making the light entertainment, it's also pretty accurate. Although LWT did make Upstairs Downstairs, and Thames did make Neville and Twain, so presentation-wise everything stayed more or less as you were. Thames certainly didn't feel the need to change. By now the skyline meant quality programming, Neville and Twain notwithstanding. They simply gave it a bit of spit and polish every so often. Over in Weekend Land, LWT were becoming aware that their sliding river, which had been used one way or another since 1971, was starting to look a bit tatty, not to mention terribly old-fashioned, in the wake of all the computer wizardry that was going on. So they gave themselves a new, glossier image, going the BBC Two route rather than the Channel 4 route. They made two new idents with distinctive and poncy names. This one's called Solari, and this one is Genesis. They weren't just interchangeable. Solari, the one with the faintly dizzying Venetian blind effect, was used in London only for London-related programming only. Genesis was used for everything else. And they're very nice, if a tiny bit dry, and quite a lot more upmarket than LWT's programming now I come to think of it. Since they could be argued to be a little on the dull side, they made a special one to go before kids programming, which, just see for yourself. Apparently kids thought personal adverts were cool in 1986, go figure. 1989 turned out to be a very busy year for television idents in the London area, which is the sentence you'll hear very often. It was the 21st anniversary, of course, of both stations. Again, 21, I don't know, traditional age of adulthood, I expect. LWT gave us this Dunmore 1989 time-related artefact. While Thames were actually compelled to change their ident for the first time in their history, assuming you don't count the change from the black and white skyline to the colour one, which you might as well not. I mean, why expend that much thought on it in the first place? I think the jingles lost some charm, but whatever, it didn't last long, for a number of reasons actually. We'll get the simplest out of the way first. Both LWT and Thames Television happily accepted the 1989 generic look, to an extent. It certainly helped that both their logos were pretty well suited to adaptation, particularly the new triangular birthday logo for Thames.